Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 249 this week, and we have a great interview with Kristina Barlaan. I've got my partners in crime, as usual, here, Byron Jabara and Joe Thomas, and those two guys just got done playing a game of Twister. So what's happening with you guys?
It was no gi twister, Gary.
I'm nursing an ankle injury now.
Yeah, but I like that you guys started playing Twister together all the time, and you say it really helps with jiu-jitsu, flexibility, putting yourselves in different positions, and it's made you guys a lot closer, you said.
Yeah, when that right hand goes on red, that's why I guess Joe's ankle got kind of banged up anyway.
Yeah,
it's all about the camaraderie, right?
On a second, what an odd game, like, to market and sell to a bunch of kids.
Now, who made up that game? It's
well, it was the 60s, if I remember correct.
But you think about that game for jiu-jitsu. Like, I tell you, I think you're basically doing planks in some positions. You're doing hip heists. There's a lot of I don't know. Maybe schools should use that as a warm-up.
Yeah.
Maybe that's Byron, you should make a YouTube video about how you use Twister, to make your jiu-jitsu better.
All right, Gary, I'll put that one on the list. As soon as you make two videos, I'll make the list. I'll finish the list off.
Yeah.
That'd be, you could do like spin the little dial and make it, right hand foot lock, left foot. And then you got to figure out how to get there from where you are. That'd be kind of a interesting thing to do.
Yeah. Byron, you could have just made yourself $1 million.
Dang it. Well, I just gave the idea to everybody, or perhaps anybody, and feel free to run with that. And I think it's Gary's idea more than anybody's.
Well, it was my idea of Twister, but you thought about how to incorporate the footlocks and everything into it. You're actually good at that, figuring out, audiobooks, to make people better at jiu-jitsu.
Like a Twister would be a game you could play on the mat.
Yeah, it could be, 6 games for BJJ. We have a link to it on the show notes. It's Byron's audiobook. And, jiu-jitsu is supposed to be about fun, but we also want to get better. And the cool thing about 6 games for BJJ, and Twister's not one of them, but maybe somehow in the
Volume
revised
2,
edition,
yeah.
Yeah, it could get in there. But basically, it's just, it's for you. It's for your teammates. It's going to make you better on the mat. It's going to make you have fun on the mat. It's going to keep you on the mat. And that's our goal. We want to grow jiu-jitsu. And what a better way to do it than 6 games for BJJ. Like I said, we have the link to it in the show notes. Check it out. I've used it. Joe's used it. Byron's used it. A lot of very important people have used it. Donald Trump's used it. So definitely check it out. And I may have been lying about the last part, but the rest of us have used it and got good results from it.
I don't know. After Trump downloaded his copy, negotiations with North Korea has taken a drastic turn.
That makes sense. Maybe that's why he doesn't have the free time to do it now. He's busy playing BJJ games.
I will comment on this because we are recording this several weeks before it actually airs. So if something happens that we didn't know about it,
nothing's going to happen, Byron. That takes a long time to start those negotiations back up and to get us over to North Korea. Yep.
Yeah, and there's now peace in the Middle East, and we owe it all to Byron.
Not only did Byron make $1 million earlier, now he's credited with peace in the Middle East.
Thank you, guys. That really means a lot. And I've been working for this, through the route of jiu-jitsu for years. Joe has the off-the-mat lesson for us. What do you have for us, Joe?
It is. It's that time of the show where we bring to you a lesson from off the mat that we're taking on the mats. And this lesson comes from our last recordings. Last week, Byron and I and Gary got on the horn, and we were recording an episode. And prior to the recording, Byron asked if anybody had an off-the-mat lesson. I said I did. I didn't really, but I had several things I could choose from, ideas running around in my head. But then Byron's dog barked and his doorbell rang and maybe his phone rang and he had to go check on some things. So Gary and I started talking about some things that were more important in jiu-jitsu. Believe it or not, there are things more important in jiu-jitsu. And I didn't give the off-the-mat lesson another thought until Byron said, and this week, Joe's got the off-the-mat lesson. And I literally had this idea in my head consciously that I'll just start talking and something will develop. And so I started talking and it quickly turned into babbling. And I was just like, guys, I got nothing. I couldn't even think of anything. But I got to thinking afterwards about how many of us approach jiu-jitsu that way. I think most of us do when we first start. We don't know anything about it. And we're like, you know what? I'm just going to sign up for some classes and I'll see where that takes me. But, man, when I tried the off-the-mat lesson, like I'll just start talking and see what happens, it was a dumpster fire. And honestly, I think with anything in life, if you don't have a plan, if you don't think ahead as to what might happen and then have contingency plans, your progress is going to be disappointing at best. So I think in jiu-jitsu, eventually, after you've done it a few months, you have to start to have a plan where I want to be in a year, where I want to be in 5 years. But maybe more importantly, you have to approach each class with a plan, each week with a plan, each month. And so you might think this month I'm going to work on closed guard. And then each class you think this class I'm going to work on this closed guard technique when we have free rolling. And then the next class I'm going to work on this. And the more you plan, the more successful you will be. Now, tell me the truth, guys. Was it a dumpster fire like I'm describing last time?
So, what you're describing happened, but through the magic of audio editing, none of that actually made it to the episode. Yeah, we said, "Hey, Joe, what do you have this weekend?" And my dog barked, and then the doorbell rang. My dog barked, and it was actually my sister's. That she called me, and I missed her at the door. My doorbell hardly ever rings, and when it is, it's just FedEx dropping something off. And so I just, I'll let it go, and then my phone rings, and then so I was gone for 10 minutes, and all that got edited out. But that did happen, and I came back, I threw you the setup for the off-the-mat lesson, and you're like, I don't know. And we made it happen anyway, but it wasn't your off-the-mat lesson. But yeah, dumpster fire. And I've been in a few dumpster fires, Joe, and after the initial stage of dumpster fire is like a smoldering little bit of a fire inside of a dumpster, and then it burns into a little bit more of a fire, and then the lid of the dumpster fire melts, and then it's just burning because the lid is off the pot, so to speak, and it's just free burning. It didn't quite get that far. You said, "Okay, I'm putting this thing out," and you just passed it.
Yeah, before you start to smell that plastic and all the trash.
But at the end of the day, as long as the dumpster's not too close to a building or somebody's house, it's just trash burning.
Joe, that is a great lesson. And as you were talking about it, it made me think, I know Byron really well. And Joe, I'm getting to know you better and better. And you guys probably get to know me, and you guys realize that I'm the slacker, never prepared for anything. I've always been that way. I just, hey, I just show up. I have no plans, and drives
Gary
my wife crazy
on his smarts and his good looks.
Drives my wife crazy. Drives my boss crazy. That's just the way I am. But we're talking about dumpster fires in our podcast, and that's the first one I've seen Joe go through. Byron's went through a couple, but it makes me think about, because I'm really not a planner. I have 50 times more dumpster fires where I just start talking and just stop and just start cussing. And it's like, I don't know where I'm going with this. And it made me think it is due, like Joe said, I don't plan it as well as these guys. I don't, write the stuff down. I don't prepare as much. And that's why I go through that versus, Joe, that's his first time. Byron, goes through one every now and then. And maybe I do need to do that, prepare a little bit better.
Gary, I would say don't be so hard on yourself. You're also older. So some of this could be because how old you are.
I was going to say, don't worry about it. Byron will just edit it out anyway.
Yeah.
You and I can come just babble, and we'll let Byron make it all nice in the end.
Yeah, it's hard to make babbling good content, so I just cut it out.
Yeah, Byron will just put it on the app, the BjjBrick app. Definitely download it. Check it out. You need it.
Yep, you can find that in any app store that you want to look for the app, and especially it's made for people who don't typically listen to podcasts. So you have a friend who doesn't listen to any podcast. The odds are, if you're listening to this, you listen to more than one or two. But tell your friend, hey, check out this podcast. I don't know how to do that. I don't even have an iPod, a magic iPod. Well, don't worry, my friend. Download the app. It updates all the time. Anytime there's an episode, it'll pull it through on there, and you get to download it and listen at your leisure. Super easy.
Well, you guys talk about how old I am. I was talking to Joe the other day and trying to figure out how to download it on my Walkman.
My biggest hassle is carrying extra batteries for my boombox.
But you do have a lot of shoulder strength. That definitely helps you. Shoulder and trap strength.
Yep.
Our technologies change over the years, and so do our attitudes and ways of thinking.
Ooh, good segue, Byron.
That kind of brings us to the quote of the week. And it's by John Maxwell. And he says, everybody has at least a few areas in their thinking and some attitudes that need to change. If you want to improve your life, you need to go after those areas. And then Byron put a question in the show notes. What areas of your BJJ need to change? I would suggest that the first area to examine would be your thinking and your attitudes towards BJJ. Maybe looking at ego a little bit. Is your ego fragile? Do you come into class each time thinking, I got to get a tap, I got to win a round? If you've got those kind of thinking, that kind of attitude, that might be the first thing you want to change. What do you think, Gary?
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. One thing that made me start thinking about is I remember, even though I started jiu-jitsu in my mid to late 30s, I remember thinking, man, there's no way I'm going to, being taught a triangle. I'm not going to be able to do a triangle. I remember having that in my head that I don't know why I thought that, but I just thought a triangle would never be my move. And, I think when you have a negative attitude like that, it can hold you back on a particular move. If I'm telling myself that, hey, for some reason I'm not going to be able to do this move, I'm never going to be able to do it. And I remember then, once I finally hit my first triangle, and actually the funny thing is, my first triangle, I hit it without the arm in.
Was it with a gi and your hand in their collar?
No, it was just
just a scissor squeeze, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
Scissor
it was
lock.
early in my career. I'll still never forget that. But it's funny from there. I just kept going, and at one point, triangle was became my move. And I think that when I had that negative attitude, it took a long time for me to hit that armless triangle. And then when I finally hit it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I can do this, and then I just started hitting them. So I just think if your mind is telling you, you can't go down that path, you're not going to be able to go down that path. Your mind is a powerful tool, and as long as it's positive and keeping you in the right mind, you're going to do very good and positive stuff.
Yeah, and that's on the mat, good lesson. Off the mat, you take that with you as well. You could be somebody who says, I'm not good about planning or organizing my thoughts, and then you start to change that. And looking at myself, this podcast, we're episode 249. Go back to episode, single digits. One of my biggest struggles was scheduling things. I was terrible at scheduling things. I'd say, hey, let's do an interview this day. I would forget to send them a reminder. I would be busy that day. Something else would happen. Like, this happened to me all the time. It's so unprofessional to contact somebody that you don't know, ask them to do an interview. They say yes. A podcast with 10 episodes. Oh yeah, people were just scrambling to get onto the show. But people would do it, and a lot of them were friends of us, just jiu-jitsu friends. And I was so messed up with this sort of thing. And I said, well, if I'm going to do this podcast and I'm going to not make everybody mad at me who I'm trying to contact and interview, I need to become somebody who is good at my own schedule. I don't have a secretary. I have a phone, though, and it has a calendar app. I use my calendar app constantly. And the best thing about my calendar app is that it has notifications. So I set a date on my calendar, interviewing Joe on the 8th, and then I'll set a reminder for 24 hours before, and I'll set a reminder for an hour before. 24 hours before it kicks on, hey, reminder, you have an interview with Joe. I'll text Joe right away. Hey, Joe, just a heads up. Remember, we're doing this tomorrow. Let me know if you can't make it. And then an hour before the show is just another reminder for me. Hey, you need to be getting home. You need to be getting the equipment ready to go. Have your questions and your pre-interview study stuff done with. And just that has changed me drastically. And it's not just for the podcast. I mean, a couple years before the show, I almost missed a family Christmas. My mom called me like, "Are you going to show up?" I was like, "Oh, it's today." I was like, man, there were a lot of areas I struggled with, like looking at a calendar and not remembering what days, because my work schedule is so random. It's kind of messed me up. There's no such thing as a weekend or a week, and yeah. But the show's helped me with that, and I've changed. I had to change my attitude about my own ability to be not bad at scheduling things, and my attitude and my thoughts about myself have changed. A lot of it is just using a tool like a phone, and it's helped me a ton. I don't know how much this goes with the quote, but I think it does. John Maxwell said this quote. He wrote a book, something about good leaders ask great questions. No, great leaders ask good questions. I think it's one of the two. I should look that up. It's a very good book on leadership. If you are a gym owner or in a spot in leadership position at work or something like that, it's a great book. It's on leadership. Obviously, it's not about jiu-jitsu at all. But man, I think anybody who owns a jiu-jitsu gym should check out that book by John Maxwell.
Yeah, hey, Byron, that book is Good Leaders Ask Great Questions.
Byron, I want to go back. You were talking about the podcast in here, about how you learned how to schedule and got better at it. And, John Maxwell talks about, if you want to improve, you need to go after those areas. And, going back to the podcast is, Byron does all of our, well, not all now that Joe's here, but our interviews. And, this is how, the podcast is so important to Byron. Byron didn't just want to put together some crappy podcast, which is weird because he asked me to join with him, the crappy guy. But, Byron wanted to have the best podcast possible. And, what really shows me the type of person Byron is and wanting to improve is Byron wanted to become a better speaker. So he signed up for Toastmasters. Signed up for Toastmasters so he could give better interviews, sound better on air. And really, that just showed me the type of person Byron is. He just doesn't want to be good at jiu-jitsu. Byron, when he gets into something and wants to do it, he wants to be good at whatever he's doing. He wants to be the best he can possibly be. And, it's good to have friends as Joe and Byron, because I just look at those guys. They make great choices. They try to better themselves. They, try to make everybody else around them better. And, the podcast is better because of Byron, because of Joe, and I'm a better person because I hang out with guys like that, that are always trying to get better. And when you hang out with people like that, or you see people, working on their weak areas, it just makes me want to catch up, or I'm going to be left behind.
Well, Gary's being self-deprecating as usual.
More like self-defecating. Man,
you bring a ton of value to the show, but I think you are making a valid point about surrounding yourself with the right kind of people, and I think that's part of the. It may be on the fringe of being related to this quote, but there's definitely value of surrounding yourself with the right kind of people.
And that really gets us to our interview with Kristina. The interview is a lot of jiu-jitsu stuff. She tells her story, got an amazing story about jiu-jitsu and what she's doing. We also talk about mental health and struggles that she's had with depression or suicidal thoughts. And that's one of the things, surrounding yourself with people that want to support you, people that love you. And a lot of that comes from jiu-jitsu. We may not be able to understand you fully, but we're on your team, and we're here to help you. And not just your team, jiu-jitsu team, but we're here being as a team as your team. Team Joe, not just team competition Joe, but make sure Joe's doing good life in general, not just Joe's got a really great armbar. And you get that feeling with having a good quality environment at jiu-jitsu. You feel like you have a team for your life and not just a competition team. So we get into that a little bit, It's an interesting conversation. We've talked about like suicide awareness and mental health issues, but not quite like this. I really appreciate Kristina for opening up and sharing so much of her life and being willing to help others as well. So this is a very important conversation or interview that we have, and I'm very grateful that she was able to come on the show and share that with us today. So here we go. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
He taught Tyler Durden how to make soap just because they had extra supplies. He once got a mat burn. It ended up causing a 3-alarm fire. When he pulls guard, the ref gives him 2 points. If you watch his competition footage, you will see Mr. Miyagi looking at him with approval.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BjjBrick Podcast. Stay listening, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Kristina Barlaan back to the BjjBrick Podcast. Kristina, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Byron.
Yeah, I'm really happy you're here. Just to let everybody know, we're recording this kind of in the middle of May, and when it's going to air, it will actually be after Worlds, and that's on the calendar. So this interview might be a little differently received. I'm really hoping, I'm thinking you're going to do great this year.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm hoping, there's a lot of, I won't say confidence issues going into this world. It's just, but I mean, there's some confidence issues going into this world. It's just mainly because I was injured back in December. So this will be my first time competing in 6 months. So it's like a nice welcome back tournament.
Oh, good.
No big deal. It's just Worlds.
Yeah, you've competed on the big stage many times at different belt levels. Could you just give us a little glimpse at your competition history and what brought you to jiu-jitsu?
Well, let's see. Competition history. My very first time competing was so this was the first time that they had the International Novice. So this is where they actually let white belts compete at Worlds. It's not actually a world title, but 2008 was the first time that they offered this division for the white belts to compete at, and that was my very first time competing. I had been training about 6 months at that point. And my professor, Caio Terra, was just like, you should compete. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready to compete. I was like, no, you'll be fine. And I didn't realize how big this tournament was. I just thought yeah, just sign up. You're going to do fine. I think everyone kind of downplayed it or just wasn't making a big deal because I really didn't know how big it was supposed to be. And then I got there and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of people here. And I guess this is a really big deal. And, I ended up winning, and it was a really fun experience because I didn't have any expectations for myself. I kind of just went in and I didn't even know any takedowns. At that point, white belts could still jump guard, and so I didn't practice any takedowns. Everyone's like, I don't even know how to start from standing. They're like, it's okay, you're just gonna jump guard. And everybody was teaching me how to do flying arm bars and flying triangles. I think the one takedown I knew how to do was grab both collars and try and shake them to the ground, and it somehow worked. And I'm like, man, I have no idea how it is to prepare for a jiu-jitsu tournament, but I'm just gonna do what I'm really, really, really good at, and we're just gonna hope that works. And it did. So I ended up having 3 matches, and I submitted everybody. That was my first time learning about what stripes were. I'm on the podium, and I was so out of place. I was standing on that podium with no shoes on, my gi top open, and I'm looking around. I'm like, where are those pieces of tape on their belts over there? I'm like, what's that black tab? And oh, 4 stripes mean you're getting close to getting your blue belt. I just had a regular old karate white belt with no black tab on it, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's a good thing. I didn't know what it all meant. I didn't let it get to my head, but it was just kind of my first time winning a medal at anything, a gold medal in anything. And so I think okay, I won't say I think. I know I wore that medal everywhere. I wore that medal to bed. I wore it to the grocery. I wore it to I think the only time I took it off was when I went to the shower. And everybody was like laughing because the international novice medals, so the white belt world's medal, was way better, like prettier looking than the actual world's medal that year. And so everybody was complaining, like, what the heck? How come the white belt's like medal looks so pretty, and like the belt for everybody else looks so ugly? I'm like, I don't know. And what makes that tournament so memorable was that was also Professor Caio Terra's first time competing at Worlds as a black belt, and was also his first time winning Worlds as a black belt. And I had bought my gi from him, and on the day of the tournament, he's like, Kristina, I need to borrow your gi because I need a gi that's really, really light. I'm like, oh yeah, no problem, Caio, no problem. So he borrowed my gi, and he ended up wearing my gi, and so that gi like won 2 gold medals in one weekend, one white belt and one black belt, and so that was forever like the lucky gi. I still have the gi. I haven't sold it, and that's probably like as far as like good competition memories go, I feel like that's like a good one to start off with, because like that's pretty priceless. Like my first time winning a gold medal. Caio's first of, I think it's like 12 world titles that he has now, like world championship titles. And so it's his first one at black belt, and wearing the same gi. It was, like, I was so out of place, but at the same time, it was like, man, I belong here. Like, this is what I want to do. I love competing. I want to do this all the time. And it kind of just ended up happening that way. I mean, I didn't intend for jiu-jitsu to become my life and be my job and all I do, but somehow the universe thought fit to make it happen. And I'm just going to go with it for as long as I can.
So about that, when did you make that decision? When I know you really fell in love with jiu-jitsu pretty quick, but when did you figure out and start to make a living with jiu-jitsu?
Well, I wouldn't say it happened on accident, but it kind of just worked that way. So I was a white belt, I competed a lot, and then I got into this relationship in which I would have to move to Arizona. And, Caio and Cesar Gracie, because Caio was the head instructor of the jiu-jitsu program over at Cesar Gracie's academy at the time, were like, well, like, we don't want anybody else to promote you to blue belt, so like we're going to promote you to blue belt before you move away. And I moved to Arizona, and he ended up being my fiance, but we were no longer together, so he's now my ex-fiance. But when we were together, he was also he also became my professor, so he was like black belt, and I was before doing exclusively just jiu-jitsu, I went to school to become a registered veterinary technician. So it's an RVT. It's pretty much the RN of the animal world. So I went to school. I was certified. I was working before I was certified as an RVT, I was working as a veterinary assistant, and I got my license before moving to Arizona. And then I'm in Arizona, and I'm trying to find work as an RVT, and I was having a lot of difficulty. I just couldn't find work at clinics or hospitals or shelters, which is particularly where I was specialized in, was like in shelter work, and no one was hiring. And little by little, I just started helping with my fiance's business. So, hey, can you help me, at this tournament? Can you work this table here? Can you help me at the school? Can you work the front desk? Can you, little by little, I just started getting more of these little tasks to start doing. And then before I knew it, all I was doing was working at the gym or working the jiu-jitsu tournaments, and then that became my job. And as much as I wanted to have like my own, I was like, well, I want to have my own job and my own independence and like make my own money. Like I don't want you just be paying for everything. It's like, well, how about this? Like, you are literally helping me with the business, and like you're now like my employee. So then that ended up happening. And as I got up higher in like belt rank, once I started getting to like blue belt, starting out helping out teaching the kids classes. Then when I was a purple belt, then I was helping teaching then I was running women's programs, and then helping with fundamental classes. And then a lot of like bulk majority of working jiu-jitsu tournaments, helping with the brackets, helping with the registrations, designing the flyers, the medals, the T-shirts, all the banner and all the banners and all the art designs. Like that was all my job, and jiu-jitsu became everything for me. And I was no longer working in the veterinary field. Everything was jiu-jitsu. So it's not like I intended it for happen, but it just out of, I guess, convenience or out of necessity, that something needed to be done. My fiance said, here, I have a task. It needs to be done. I don't know how to do this, and I want to see if you can learn how to do it so I don't have to hire somebody else to do it. I'm like, all right, got it. You need me to learn how to use Photoshop? I'll learn how to do Photoshop. You need me to learn how to sew? I'll learn how to sew. You need me to learn how to, make contacts and contact sponsors and go on meetings and get in touch with these certain people. Like, I'll do it. And essentially, I just picked up all these skills because instead of him hiring somebody else, he just hired me to do it, quote unquote, hired me. And I just learned how to do the job, and then he would compensate me for it. So it was kind of like this weird dynamic where he wasn't just my fiance, but he wasn't just my coach or my professor, but he was also my employer and a mentor in a lot of ways, like just teaching me all the skills that you need to learn in order to survive in jiu-jitsu from a business aspect.
It just sounds like so many other things that happen in life. It kind of gradually it builds, and you find where you're home, and you make a full-time thing out of it, and then that's what you do now.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, is like when our relationship ended and I moved back to California, and at first I was thinking, it's like, well, I'm going to have to find a job, and then I was like, wait a minute, it's like, I really can't see myself doing anything else other than jiu-jitsu. Like, I have a lot of skills. I've acquired a lot of skills, and I've learned how to do a lot of things, and like, I'm really, really passionate about this. Like, during the time, of course, teaching, I've also learned how to run seminars and run programs and do open mats and make, market things. I'm like, I have a lot of things to offer in jiu-jitsu. Like, and I really can't see myself doing a 9-to-5. And so when I moved back, it's just like, I really got to commit to this now. Like someone else isn't going to like pay me, or I don't have a relationship to fall back on where, the person I'm dating is the person who's also paying me. But now it's like, it's my responsibility to go out there and find those opportunities. And luckily I was able to, just by, working really, really hard and applying myself and asserting myself. And things are really, really not easy. I by no means am saying, it's it's easy walking the park and now I'm living the dream. I'm like, yeah, like the dream is I get to travel, I get to do jiu-jitsu all day, and I get to connect with so many different people on a level that I would have never been able to imagine at a younger age. But this, at the end of the day, it's like, man, I'm really pushing my body. Like I sacrifice a lot of time, like personal time. Like, do I date? Like, not really. Like, do I get to spend that much time with my friends and my family? Not that much. I'm at the gym more often than not, and people see like, oh, it's so great that you get to do jiu-jitsu for a living, but like getting to do jiu-jitsu for a living, it means that you're hustling for a living, and like you're always scrambling. You can never really, really relax. You always have to be like just on the move, and the moment that you kind of like settle too much or like you stop moving, then that's when like, oh man, you find yourself in trouble. So it's definitely not for everybody. It could be for everybody if you have the heart for it. But if you don't, and you just want something that's like, hey, I feel like I need a little bit more security, and I don't want to have to, keep hustling and traveling and all this training and really go out there and be uncomfortable and make these conversations happen in which I can be paid for my skill set. Just, do it for a hobby. And that's fine too. Everyone can enjoy jiu-jitsu on different levels. But to make it your living, you really, really got to commit to that and really own up to it, because it's not going to be easy at all. Not by a little bit.
Yeah. Kristina, when you were on a couple years ago, you talked about Caio moving to the U.S. and you watched him. It sounds like kind of what you're doing, like push really hard as far as being the best instructor, competing at that super high level, and it not an easy lifestyle. I hear you talking about your lifestyle now, and it reminds me of the conversation we had when you were describing Caio's lifestyle.
Yeah. Like, there's definitely a lot of, like, I don't think I gotten to the point where I'll buy one Subway sandwich and separate it into 3 sandwiches and eat that all day. But I mean, like, I'm like, it's almost like I live out of my car. Like, you know, every single, like, Sunday, like, I pack up my car and there's like 12 Gs in the trunk, and then like all the clothes I need for the week, and then whatever, you know, food provisions that I need, and then like everything's in my car, and I'm bouncing from like place to place. Like, during the week, I'm not sleeping in my own bed. Like, I'm sleeping on a couch, you know, in someone else's house, and all just to make it easier for me to commute and make it to the gym and teach and train and really, really pursue what it is that I feel like I have purpose. I'm passionate about it. I have a purpose. And that purpose is not just to be good at jiu-jitsu, but it's to be able to be in a position in which I can empower other people, because that's what jiu-jitsu has done for me. And that was passed down to me, you know, from my professors, and their professors, you know, pass it down to them, and them, you know, like, and the line goes on. It's like, people don't do jiu-jitsu, you know, simply just to win things. People don't just do jiu-jitsu because they, you know, maybe they have like a high stress job and they want to blow off some steam. Like, it's more than that. Like, it's, at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is all about feeling empowered, right? We talk about like the concept of having control, controlling the aspect of the game and the pace and the match and the round and however you want to look at it. But with that control comes empowerment, right? Like, essentially, we are the ones that are in control of our fates. We're the ones that are in control of how the match or the round is going to go. Even when we lose, it's like, man, that person completely did whatever they wanted with you, but like we were empowered by the fact that, but I was able to fight back. But I had the ability, I had the skill set, or I had the knowledge to be able to acknowledge that I was in a bad position and I chose to try to fight out, or if I couldn't fight, then I tapped and I decided to keep going. Like, being able to be passionate about empowering people, that is definitely like my calling, and it just so happened that jiu-jitsu was able to point me in that direction, because I really didn't know what it is that I wanted to do with my life until jiu-jitsu came in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just to do jiu-jitsu. It's definitely it has allowed me to connect with people in a way that, again, I would not have been able to connect otherwise, due to like anxieties and a whole sorts of myriad of other, like, you know, like lack of communication or inability to communicate, you know, who I am as a person, and finding people who are like-minded and being surrounded by people who are like me, when the majority, like, up until I found jiu-jitsu, I'd always been feeling like, who the heck am I? And like why am I capable of doing all these things, but I have no place to use them, to utilize these things. And jiu-jitsu is like, hey, you know, like, why don't you try it over here? And there it is.
Yeah, it sounds like jiu-jitsu is kind of the vehicle to help you reach your goals of helping people.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's the most unexpected vehicle. It's kind of like, you know, it's like Back to the Future, you know, and you're thinking like Time Machine. And I don't think Marty McFly expected that was going to be a freaking DeLorean, you know, like no one expects that the Time Machine is going to be a car with the suicide doors, you know. And it's funny is that metaphor is, it's true. Like, jiu-jitsu might have been the vehicle for me, and it might be in a different vehicle. It could be different vehicles for different people. Like, it could be cooking for another person or dancing for another. But but once you find what it is that you are like put in this world to do, it's really, really hard to get up, to like step out, right? Because it's like, man, like I hopped in. And then, like, I saw all these things, and it's like, man, this is an amazing journey. Like, I kind of want to keep going. And again, like, that vehicle is different for everybody. I'm just glad that jiu-jitsu was a vehicle for me, because I thought it was going to be dancing or some sort of art. Well, I guess jiu-jitsu is technically, it's an art, it's a martial art. But I definitely would not be thinking combat sports, not a million light years, not until it came in. I was like, oh, You know, so there's more to this stuff than just beating people up. Oh, okay. It's something deeper.
Yeah. You talk about being very busy and traveling a lot. Are you traveling to teach? Are you traveling to train?
Yeah, both.
Okay. Is there one that's a lot more to do one or the other, or is it pretty balanced?
Well, I live an hour away from the gym. So there's like the hour, like to and from the gym is like an hour back and forth. I used to commute 1 hour to the gym and 1 hour home every single day. And then during the week now, like I said, I sleep on a couch with some close family friends. They're pretty much like my family. It's really weird calling them friends, but they are pretty much like my family. And they're like 30 minutes away. So instead of having to do like the commute like 2 hours in one day, then it's only 1 hour of commuting in one day. And then, of course, there's always traveling for seminars, whether it's, out of state or out of the country. Like after Worlds, I'll be, hitting up states like Tennessee, and then I'll be going to Asia again and be, hopefully teaching Japan, possibly Singapore for sure, Malaysia and Taiwan, possibly hit up Hong Kong again. Like, international traveling was, again, also something I didn't think I would be doing in my lifetime as much as I am. And now like my passport's like almost full up, and it's like, wow, this is crazy, like almost time, actually I think I just renewed it. So, man, I would never thought that I would like have a full passport, and now I do. And again, like getting to experience cultures and like in a way that with, and two, like jiu-jitsu is also language. Like I get to experience other cultures. And I am only able to speak like two languages, one English and the second being jiu-jitsu. Okay, third being food. Third is another language I can also speak really, really well in. And so it's like, man, like I literally can go anywhere with jiu-jitsu for as long as like, I really believe in it and I really believe in myself. But yeah, so teaching and training in San Jose with Caio, like that's usually the biggest commute. Sometimes I can teach closer to home, like at my friend Brian Pangilinan. He's one of my best friends, and I like to like stop in and train, and every now and then when he's out of town I'll cover classes, and that's close to my hometown. Or I can fill in at other affiliate schools who are all like relevantly close in the Bay Area. But the biggest one that like on a daily basis, that'd be San Jose, which is, it's a long drive. It's not it's not like the prettiest or the most like entertaining drive either. And there's always traffic. So, it helps that I am at the gym all day long. And so then I, for the most part, I missed the majority of the traffic, but that's kind of like, yeah, you're at the gym all day long and then you have to find other ways to be productive. Like you used to have to like bounce from gym to gym to gym, like commuting all the time to different schools. And now that I can just be here in San Jose, it's great.
Kristina, you mentioned anxiety. I'm curious just to learn from you how jiu-jitsu has affected that or different moods. You're very busy, but your busyness, a lot of that comes from jiu-jitsu. I wonder if it's like give and take. Like sometimes you get on the mat and you feel really good getting off the mat, and sometimes a lot of your anxiety, stress, or moods you don't want to have are coming from jiu-jitsu. I'm just curious to kind of hear you talk about that.
Oh yeah, well, I've been struggling with anxiety and depression since a young age. It wasn't until I was in my late teens where I was actually diagnosed with it and was able to see a doctor and receive medication and treatment. I no longer am on medication or I'm receiving therapy like from a medical doctor. But I had, lived pretty much my entire life dealing with it and not knowing what it was and not knowing, like not having the proper tools to handle it. And then you pair that with traumatic life experiences. And that, doesn't help either. And for a long time, I've really just been lost. I am, to this day, I'm actually still surprised that I am alive because if it wasn't for just out of pure defiance and willpower, and then eventually having jiu-jitsu coming in, like, I should be dead. I had attempted, suicide 3 times in my lifetime, and majority of those were when I was in my teenage years, particularly in high school. And every now and then I still have to deal with suicidal thoughts, which is very, very difficult. But one of the main things that has helped, like with jiu-jitsu being added in my life, is that like I mentioned, like being empowered, but it allows me to work in a way that's very, very true to myself. And it keeps your mind active in a way that, like, I want to say you don't have time to think about being depressed or having time to think about being anxious, because a lot of those times those things are just always there. But when it comes down to, like, when you're rolling, and when you're hyper focused into that moment, it's like, man, like, I just have to focus on my breathing. Like, how's my heart rate? Like, okay, like, you're so, like, in the present, that jiu-jitsu just becomes very therapeutic, right? If we were to break down, for those, like, who don't really understand depression, because sometimes it's really, really, really hard to explain depression and anxiety, like, those mental illnesses to people who don't experience them. Like, oh, like, why can't you just think happy thoughts? Why can't you just be positive or just smile? Or you should exercise. Like, I am, obviously my job is to exercise and do jiu-jitsu, and you still have depression, you still have anxiety. If you can think that, like, depression is kind of like when you're constantly stuck in the past, and anxiety is when you're constantly stuck in the future, right? And it's like either it's like too slow or too fast. This is like the simplest way that I can explain it. When you're forced to be in the present, those two extremes no longer exist. At least for the time being. For the time that you're on the mat, like, and every now and then, like, like you're learning the technique, and then sometimes you'll feel like the depression is just really, really, really strong, right? And you'll sit back. Like, the always hardest part, like with depression, sometimes the hardest part, it'll just be like getting out of bed, right? But then you think of things like, oh, well, this person is really looking forward to me being there today, or I promised this person that I was going to work on this position with them, or these people are really depending on me to be there. And it makes it a little bit easier to put depression to the side, and be like, all right, like, I really feel like I have, like, a ton of weight on my shoulders right now. Like, I literally cannot get out of bed, but I'm going to try, because you jiu-jitsu essentially gives you a goal. It gives you something to strive for. I'm like, all right, so now I got out of bed. Now the next step is like, okay, I need to leave my room, right? And then every single step that you take towards, getting to the gym, that whole process can be really, really, really painful for someone who has depression. I know I've had days like that where I literally I can't get up. And, but somehow I just find a way to power through, because I have that purpose. Like, I know that, like, you know what, like, I really need to make it to jiu-jitsu. I really need to make it today. And just that alone can be enough for me to, like, all right, I can hold on just a little bit longer. I can hold on just a little bit longer. I can hold on just a little bit longer. Because sometimes the depressive states last really, really long time. Sometimes, like, they hit really, really hard, but they don't always last forever. Like, they just, like, they kind of come in, they hit really, really hard, and then you can kind of move forward again. And the same thing with anxiety. Like, sometimes it's like, it's so overwhelming to be around people, or, there's just too much energy. There's too much going on. And I've had a couple panic attacks at the gym. Sometimes things get really, really overwhelming, but somehow jiu-jitsu added into that, evens it all out. Like, again, like you're so stressed out and you're so panicked about all the what ifs or what these things that could happen or are happening around you, and you literally have no control over them. And then jiu-jitsu again comes in and says like, hey, you have control of something, and that just makes it kind of easier for you to, like, again, get back to center and be like, all right, like, things, I'm not as out of control. Like, okay, so these things are going on in my life right now, and it's really, really causing me to panic because I feel like I'm spinning out. But if I can at least have this one grip, then maybe I can hold on a little bit longer. Maybe I'm not so spinning out of control so badly. I would say that, like, more often than not, jiu-jitsu just allows me to be me and to be free. Like, it feels like breathing when there's all these things that I worry about, or all these things that are just kind of working against me. Jiu-jitsu is like the one thing that's just kind of like, all right, I can have this, like, this constant. There's only been a couple times where jiu-jitsu wasn't the answer, where it was like, it's too overwhelming to be at the gym, and like, I really, really, really have to resign to, like, take care of myself, and I really need to stay in bed, or I really need to stay inside the house and not go out. And those days are completely fine, like, not every single day can be a win. But just having something to look forward to, and being able to have goals and be able to stay motivated, in which, in most cases or on a day-to-day, it feels like you're a lost cause, or it feels like you're helpless. That could be, like, the difference between you making it through another day, or a day where it's just like, man, like, you feel like you're just really, really stuck and beyond help. The community is so important, and that's another aspect of jiu-jitsu that really, really does help, because more often than not, when someone is suffering from either anxiety or depression, they are also very isolated, and they feel like they're alone, and because of that, we tend to isolate ourselves even more. And so, again, having a purpose and having a community, I'd say those are, like, the top two things that jiu-jitsu offers. I mean, of course, there's the physical aspect. Yes, you get the endorphins. You get to have, like, that chemical, like, release, and the physical strain on your body, which helps deal with, like, the physical pains of anxiety and depression. But community and purpose, and having a goal, and having something to look forward to, or have something that can give you a sense of control. Those factors alone are life-changing.
Well, thank you, Kristina, for sharing that. I don't think I've ever had anybody share an experience like this on the show yet, and we hear people talk about depression or suicidal thoughts, but to share your personal story, I think that's a whole different thing, and I would imagine that's very difficult to do, but also important. So thank you for that. I'm definitely not qualified to speak on these issues. I really, I'm quickly out of my element, white belt, no stripes. But I do know it's a very important topic. Thinking about this and thinking about listeners out there, if somebody is having a hard time, what kind of thing would you say, or what kind of advice would you have? Or is it more of like somebody needs to, like, listen to them? What do you have to offer those people?
Yeah, reach out. Again, like, the number one, I won't say killer, but the number one thing that really, really gets people is the isolation factor of depression and anxiety, like feeling isolated, feeling that we're alone, and feeling like we are, like, things with depression and anxiety too. It makes us believe that we are unworthy of love, and that we are unworthy of attention. We also fear that asking for help would be a cry for attention, like, and I've heard all of this when I was younger, like, when I was really, really in a dark place, and asking for help, and not having the right people to support you is really difficult, because it's like, you're just doing it for attention, or you don't really feel this or that, and it's like not feeling validated. And And the moment that we are isolated and alone, that's the scariest. And that's when you don't know if you're going to see another day. And I don't want to trigger anything with anybody, but like this is the truth. Like it's always the hardest when we feel like we're all alone and we're drowning and there's no lifesaver around. And so the number one thing that I would say for anyone who is struggling with anxiety or depression, especially with suicidal thoughts, is reach out to someone, to anybody. Receive treatment. There is nothing wrong with receiving treatment. If you need to be medicated, receive medication. If your healthcare allows for you to have treatment for mental illnesses, for mental health, do it. Because it's just like if you had a broken bone, or if you were sick in any other way, you would go to the doctor and you're like, I need surgery, or I need this medication. Like if you had diabetes, you would say, I need my insulin, right? Like if you had cancer, you wouldn't just be like, well, I'm just going to have these warm, positive thoughts and it'll go away. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. You need help, right? And a lot of times, like anxiety and depression, there's a lot of physical pain that comes along with that, right? There's the weight loss, there's the headaches. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in training and I was only able to get halfway through comp training before I had a panic attack. I had to take myself off the mat. I left the gym. I had to go home. I spent, that day, the rest of the day at home. And then I spent the following day just recovering and decompressing. And I'm like, all right, tomorrow I'm going to go back to the gym and I'm going to get back on it. And then, 3 a.m. in the morning, I had intense stomach pains caused by anxiety and stress, and like I couldn't move until 4 p.m. later that day because the stomach pains were so painful. And people don't realize that mental pain manifests physically. And so if you're not getting help, you're I don't say you're only hurting yourself, but you are depriving yourself. You're depriving yourself of the opportunity to become well. And it is hard sometimes because it's so easy to be like, well, a lot of times when people are contemplating suicide, it isn't because they want to be dead. It's because they just don't want to exist. And they don't want to exist because they don't want to feel pain anymore. And a lot of reasons why we don't want to feel pain anymore is because we just feel like no one sees us. You feel invisible because your pain is not visible, right? The pain is on the inside. No one can see it. And so it's hard for people to believe that it's actually there. So being able to communicate, reach out to people, find a community of people, like in jiu-jitsu. My really, really good friend, Erin Hurley, this is a really great example of this. She started the campaign Submit the Stigma, and she brought this together after her father had committed suicide, and she also struggles with mental health issues, and she felt like, you know what, I need to do something about this, and jiu-jitsu was a community for her as well, where she met other like-minded people and other people who had the same same issues as her, and we were able to find this solidarity, and once we start illuminating that light onto the subject that's just so shrouded in darkness and people just don't want to talk about it. I know that's how it was for me when I was growing up. You don't really have a problem. You don't want to talk about being depressed. You don't want to make everybody else sad. Just think of happy things, right? It was like this plague. You couldn't talk about it. But being stuck with that pain and not being able to verbalize it, it's like a different type of cancer. It just slowly grows and festers and it kills you from the inside until one day you just can't take it anymore. When really all you needed to do was just express it out. I don't want to say all you need to do because it's not that simple. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to reach out, quite honestly. And I find that has been easier for me to speak on my experiences with my mental health issues because I've realized that I've been hurting for so long. And then once I was able to talk about it, that was kind of like I got to take my power back. I got to have control over it. So instead of depression and anxiety controlling me, I got to be able to regulate it a little bit because I didn't let it dictate my life. Of course, there's some days where it's just way stronger than me, and that can't be helped sometimes. But if you are in a position to just talk about your pain openly, regardless of who's listening, somebody else is going to hear it. And they're like, you know what? That's me too. Thank you for talking about that. And then now that person will be feeling a little bit like more confident to speak out. And then that person can start talking, and then somebody else might hear it. And then somebody else might hear it. And then somebody else might hear it. Community is so huge. And the jiu-jitsu community in general, like, I feel like there's a lot of us who suffer from mental health issues, and we use jiu-jitsu for the same reasons, because it makes us feel good, and because it helps alleviate the pains of anxiety and depression, and it gives us the ability to connect with other people, and so that we're not alone, and we find that bond, and we find that solidarity, and we find that strength, so that we're not doing it by ourselves. Like when you go out to compete, of course you're competing by yourself. It's just you and your opponent. But on the process to getting there, you have a team, you have a family, you have a whole school behind you, and they help get you there. And that's the same thing with dealing with anxiety and depression. It's like when you go out on your day-to-day basis, you're doing it all by yourself. But knowing that you have people who support you and like they see you, like they validate that your pain is real and they don't ignore it, and they look at you and they acknowledge you and they still embrace and love you regardless, that is probably one of the best feelings to have and one of the best allies to have when you suffer from mental illnesses like depression and anxiety. Straight up, just we can't do it alone, and you have to know that you're not alone. And then, of course, all the other steps. Reach out, find counseling, a therapist if you need it, medication if you need it. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. We all need help, one way, shape, or form or another. Just don't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, it sounds like jiu-jitsu has several things going for it to help. Distract you from your day, get you exercise, which changes some of your body chemistry, and the social aspect. The thing about getting professional help, if you go into jiu-jitsu and you tell your friends or whoever's there, today's a hard day. I almost didn't want to get out of bed. This is going on. I don't know what you tell them. You tell a little bit about what's happening. They're not professionals. Generally speaking, maybe one or two here or there, but you're telling just a person, and so you don't really know how they're going to react. They might shrug it off. They might tell you just to, hey, cheer up. Don't be so, like you said, just change your mood or don't bring everybody else down. So there's a little bit of a risk when you just share that, but it's good to try, I think. But when you go to a professional, they know what to say. They've heard this before. They've been here before. It's like trying to learn jiu-jitsu with your neighbor who also doesn't know jiu-jitsu. And you can learn a little bit and bump around and have a good time, or you can go to a professional and you could get some work done and you could feel better about it. And
exactly.
I think there's room for both. I think you need the example is not perfect because you do need the friends that are just normal people that not normal people. That's probably wrong to say, but they're just average people and they don't really fully understand it, but they are open to listening and they're nice about it and they love you and they care about you. Those people are very important in your life, but they're not the same as a qualified professional that will help you get through your troubles.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like, during the time, like, and things too, it's like, sometimes it's hit or miss, like finding the right therapist, finding the right medication, like all of it is really, really, really stressful. And it can be hard, A lot of times people don't want to go through the process of it just because of like, man, like I don't want to go. I don't want to tell people that I'm doing therapy, or I don't want to tell people that I'm on medication. Again, like there's the stigma behind it that's like, oh, we can't talk about it. It's like, oh, for shame, feeling shamed. But your analogy is correct. It's kind of like, you could try and talk with a whole bunch of other white belts and try to learn some moves with like just other white belts, and it's kind of fun. Like you have like your friends, and that's cool and everything like that. But it's not going to be the same as learning from a black belt. And again, like not every black belt though is going to be the right instructor for you, right? You know, not every black belt is going to be like teaching the way that you like to be, you like to learn, or maybe their style isn't your style. So it's like finding the right place, finding the right, again, and the right doses, the right medications. Like it's a lot of work, and a lot of people, a lot of times they don't want to do it. I know, like I personally, like I'm not medicated anymore, and I don't receive therapy anymore. But I am always aware that if I feel like things are really getting out of control, and like, okay, this is to the point where it's really debilitating, like I can't function, I can't even go to jiu-jitsu, I'm debilitated, like then that's the time. Like I'm fully aware in my head that like, okay, now's the time that I need to go and seek professional help. And it's sometimes it's just really hard to get to that point. But hopefully, like again, the first step is just reaching out with like people that you really trust and that you love, and that people that you know that care for you, and sharing with them, or even finding people who have like who have similar stories or similar issues. It starts off with that, and then hopefully you're hoping that like the encouragement will come in, because again, it's like I could talk to someone and be like, oh yeah, I've been depressed before. And it's like, okay, it's not about just being like depressed once. This is like living with depression. And there is a difference, you know. Sometimes you can have situational depression, or you can have even like environmental or seasonal depression. You know, it's really common during the winter times when there's not enough sun.
Okay.
You know, but when we're talking about like when you actually like this is like a thing that you like, it's like doesn't matter like what the weather because I will say like too that there are things that can affect the severity of my depression. Like weather can affect the severity of it. Diet can also affect the severity. You know, like there's certain things that I stay away from so that it won't trigger panic attacks. Like I stay away from coffee. I stay away from like energy drinks and things like that. You know, like learning what are your triggers, and you know, sometimes you know what they are, and sometimes you have no idea what they are. It's like you really have to be cognizant, and you have to really like just don't lie to yourself, you know. And hopefully, again, like once you start opening up to like family members, then it's like you hope that someone will encourage you that like, hey, you know, I know it's like really hard, and you know, sometimes like it can be very difficult, but maybe you might want to consider, you know, professional help. And again, like even in jiu-jitsu, even people here who like get injured, like they like roll their ankle and they sprain it. Like people will walk around with a busted ankle or a busted knee, and they will refuse to see a doctor, right? And it's the same way. I want to say the same way, like we say it in a kind of comical way, but like sometimes we are really, really stubborn. Yeah. And it takes for us to feel like an actual, like the pain to the point where it's like, I can't function, for us to be like, okay, I'll get help. Like I'll see the doctor, you know, I'll see a therapist. Like I'll receive treatment, because we are stubborn and we are hard-headed, and we don't want to believe that we are in as much pain as we really are. Like sometimes we're like, oh, maybe I'm just over-exaggerating, or maybe I'm being a baby about it, or I just need to toughen up. And it's not always like that, you know. Our biggest ally and our biggest enemy is ourselves. So we can either allow ourselves to get help, or we can also deny ourselves help. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that is our own choice to make. But the people that we surround ourselves with, they can influence that. And so again, when you find a really good community and that allows you to feel, again, validated and feels like you're part of something, it makes it a little bit easier to choose to help yourself as opposed to not help yourself. Yeah. Because you want to keep contributing, right? You want to keep feeling important. You want to keep feeling like I belong to this place, and it just gives you something to fight for.
You said it's your own choice to make if you want to get help.
Yes. Yeah.
To an extent, if you're feeling like you want to hurt yourself, really it's really out of your hands at that point in time, and it shouldn't be a choice anymore. You need to get help. And,
yes,
and
absolutely.
If it's your friend that's saying that to themselves, no, screw it, I don't want to call and get help, but I do want to hurt myself. It's not their choice anymore. You need to go ahead and call 911 and get them some help right away.
Yes.
There's like, you can't let, if you know about it, you can't let somebody hurt themselves because it's their choice. They're not thinking the way that they should be, and they need that help. They might be mad at you now and later, but they'll eventually, at least you'll be able to know that you did the right thing by helping that person out.
I've had to talk a few people down, and it's always hard, but it's like there's always like that moment where it's like, whoa, like I've had some where it's like I didn't realize that my life mattered so much to you, or I didn't realize that like I could have this effect, or I didn't, like for some reasons, like at some point it's like they reach this point of clarity and they're just like I don't want to die, I just don't want to feel this pain, it is really scary and it's really hard. And it's heartbreaking too, because it's like you imagine, like I feel it from also feeling it too. So like I know the pain, but can you imagine like having someone who has no experience with it and seeing it, and it's just like, what do I do? What do I do? And it can be really, really hard for those who don't understand. But empathy and compassion are going to be like the biggest allies in this case. Like put yourself in that person's shoes and then like feel that pain and then feel the need to want to alleviate that pain, because we are human, and to like cut yourself off of those emotions and those abilities, like to feel those things. It's like you're kind of cutting yourself off from your own heart, and you're cutting yourself off from like your connection to other people. And yeah, if you are in a position to help, I mean, like, even if it's just a phone call, sometimes all it needs is a phone call. Sometimes all it needs is just, again, saying hi or acknowledging a person. Like we really don't know the impact that we have on other people until a person says like, hey, thank you, because this action that you did caused this reaction for me, and now I'm still here. Just be good people. Just don't be an asshole. Just be kind. And I think the world would be so much better place if we just practice a little bit more empathy, a little bit more compassion, and lots of communication. And then I guess we kind of go from there. But I feel like, it's like, as good human beings, we should always be able to help when we can. Yeah. If we're able to. It's not, I'm not going to try and put like responsibility on everyone, like, oh, you need to do this or you're a shitty person. Like, no, not like that at all. But it's like if you were that person, it's like, wouldn't you want someone to help you? Or like, what would you do if it was like someone that you really, really cared about and it wasn't some stranger? Like, always just imagine things from there. And like, the always hard thing too is like, oh, like when something tragic does happen, it's like, oh, it's my fault. I shoulda, woulda, coulda, and we always feel like those regrets too. I've had friends who have committed suicide, and then like there's that powerlessness and feeling like, man, like I wish there was something I could have done, or like, man, I didn't know, or like I had an idea, like maybe, but I wasn't really quite sure. Like, and then that's when you feel like, oh wow, like they must have been in a lot of pain. And then, but not just like we can't carry that kind of guilt either, like have like a balance of like, okay, we're gonna, be responsible when you can, but like when it's completely out of your hands, like knowing that you did what you could while you could, or like knowing that you at least tried. That sometimes that's just enough,
Yeah. And going back to I'm not a professional person at this, but I could easily say something that is the wrong thing. My friend could say, hey, I'm feeling down. I don't want to get out of the house. I haven't left the house for 2 weeks or whatever. And then the response might be, well, let's go get a beer. Well, that's the problem, is the beer. Or, like not being like, I guess what I'm trying to say, sometimes people that actually care about you will say the totally wrong thing and not mean it to be bad, but it hurts way worse sometimes when like, oh, they don't get it at all. And, and just to, I don't know. I just think there's so much value in having the professional hear you, and then also not taking it try not to take it the wrong way when somebody that you know loves you hurts you with something that just sets with you wrong.
Yeah. Really important to communicate. Like I have this problem with my mom in particular. Like I love my mom. I know my mom loves me, but she doesn't understand depression. She doesn't understand anxiety. And sometimes she'll say these things and it's like, man, like you just don't get it. But like I've like over the years I've had to practice a certain amount of like forgiveness, and I've also had to like make due diligence of like trying my best to explain and educate her on what it is that I am going through. I'd say nowadays it's a lot better than it has been, you know, but it's still difficult. But like we do have a responsibility. Again, like part of asking for help and part of like rescuing is also teaching those that we want to help us. Like we have to teach them how to help, you know. Like sometimes it's like I'm not some problem that I need for you to fix. Like sometimes when I'm venting or when I'm telling you like this is the pain that I'm having, I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not asking you to do anything other than just to be there for me, you know. And sometimes like we think it in our head, and sometimes we think, oh well, they should just know that. Like they don't. And so we also need to be very transparent. This is like the hard part because like we want to hide and we want to act like we don't need help and we don't want to talk about it. But like, and then when we do start talking about it, it's like, well, I only want to talk about these certain things. It's like, no, like you really have to let people understand. It's kind of like, you know, you go to a party and like, you know that like you're allergic to certain foods, and then like, you know, you go and then, and you don't tell anyone that you're allergic to these foods, you know? Like, hey, you know, like give us a heads up, or like let us know, like help me help you, like let us know what we can do, you know. So always having the lines of communication available. Again, professional help always great, but if you can enable the people around you with tools to help you, like I've had to explain to people like, here, this is what you need. This is what I need for you to do, like when I have a panic attack, like, you know, like. I you know, or it's kind of like if you have seizures, or again if you have like an allergic reaction to something, it's like you need to tell the people around you that you care about, like this is what you need to do in case of emergency, you know, like
if I miss class for a week, you need to call me, or you know, if I miss class, I'm always there Tuesday, I'm not there, text me and see what's up. Maybe I have a flat tire, maybe I haven't left the house all day. Help. Like just help me help you. And they want to, and like you said, sometimes it's hard that people just don't get it. And I think it's I'm trying to see and understand, but I don't get it either a lot of times because I've never had to deal with that. And you talk about, you know, I just want you to listen to the problem. I think sometimes I get that with my wife. Like she'll come home from a hard day at work and she'll be complaining about this and complaining about that, and I'm much better than I used to be, but I'll come at her with like a solution. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this, and then we'll do this, and the problem will be fixed after this. And no, she wants to tell me that she had a crappy day. That's all she wants to do is just say, my day sucked. And she doesn't need me to help her with a solution. She just wants to tell somebody that cares about her that she had a rough day. And her telling me, hey, don't solve my problem. It's not... The problem is I had a bad day, and I want to tell somebody about that, and that's the solution to my problem right now. And so by her telling me this, I'm not trying to annoy her by trying to solve these problems that she doesn't want me to try to fix. It's up to her to fix these problems. It's not like she's got a lot of problems. But when I know when she's complaining about her day, it's better for me just to listen to her day and to say, that does suck. That sounds like it was a tough day. And instead of saying, why didn't you do this? Or how about next time do this instead? That doesn't help her.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just the validation of the pain. Like, can you validate my feelings? Validate that, like this is what I'm feeling. Can you just validate it? And then and I just don't want to be alone and feeling shitty. You know, like I don't necessarily need to fix. I just need for you to listen and just to know that, like, hey, like at the end of the day, like I'm telling you because I love you, and like you're the person that I want most to hear about what has happened. You know. I don't expect for you to do anything else other than, like, Like, if you want that person to do something, like, sometimes it'll be easier. Like, this is what I need. Like, can you give me a massage? Like, I had a bad day. Or can you do this? You know, like, and you know, that as far as like relationships go. But sometimes it's just like, man, you just want to vent. Like, again, because you want the pain to be seen, because the pain is invisible. People can't see it, and we feel like if it's out there and we can see it and we can talk about, then it's real, and it's not like, oh, it's not like the boogeyman, or it's not like the monster under the bed, right? It's like, oh, like, we can actually like put the flashlight there, like, you know, I won't say it's like it's not there, but like, can you just, you know, like, just tell me that, like, I'm not crazy, you know, and just tell me that, like, hey, what I'm like, you know, what you're feeling, like, you know, like, I don't say it's completely normal, like, because normal is such a, I don't like saying like, oh, it's normal, but like, it's understandable. Yeah. You know, I feel like is the better term to say, like, oh, it's understandable. It's understandable.
Kristina, you talked about like different elements and different things that could make this kind of happen. I think you mentioned coffee and certain things that will trigger these feelings. Does competing cause more stress and anxiety, and could that be somewhat of an element to this?
It can be for certain people. For me, it's not.
Okay.
For me, and I'd say like having the stresses of training for competition, or having a hyper focus that actually keeps me pretty level. The times I have had panic attacks at tournaments, I've had it where it was basically like, I had one where it's because like I had a lot of outside things going on in my life, and a lot of like outside stressors, and then plus like the heavy hard dieting, like I wasn't mentally or physically, like, I should not have been competing that day, but like I wanted to try and make it happen, you know. But I wouldn't necessarily say that competition has been a trigger. I'd say other things have been where it's like, maybe it's like a physical thing. Like, I've had it where I was sick, right? And I'm training really, really hard. And then I'm trying to breathe, and then I can't breathe. And now I'm panicking because I can't breathe, you know? And it wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm worried about like the training or the competing or the match or the rounds. Like, no, I'm freaking out because I can't breathe. Like, I feel like I'm dying, you know? And then like, it's like the snowball effect. And then all of a sudden, like, you're in just full blown panic mode because you think you're going to die, you know? I can't say that that's the same for everybody else, because there are some people where it's like, there's so much like pressure that, like, put on the shoulders of competing. Like, and a lot of that is like outside stressors. Like, like, for example, I had one that I just posted about on my Instagram today where, I have this, I used to have this intense fear of failure. I'm not saying I don't have it anymore, but that fear has definitely been made into a kitten size as opposed to like this really big monster, right? Like, oh, if I don't do well, then people aren't going to love me, and I like, who's going to want to learn from me? Who's going to want to follow me? Who's going to be my friend? Who's going to want to train with me? You know, and then those thoughts start coming in. It's not necessarily the jiu-jitsu or the competition or the competing that's causing anxiety. It's the outside stuff that we're bringing into the actual competition that we put on the value of competition, if that makes sense. And then I'm like, oh, now you have a panic attack because it's like, I failed everybody, you know. But it's not, at least in my experience, it wasn't because of the jiu-jitsu. It was because of the value that I was putting on my personal self, like me as a person. Yeah. Having it to be dependent on what I was doing as an athlete. And so I feel like it's really, really important for those who do feel like every single time that they're competing, they feel like to the point that they're going to like, I'm so anxious, like I'm going to have a panic attack or I'm panicking. I feel like if you can separate who you are as an athlete and who you are as a person, and realize that what you do as an athlete has like pretty much has no effect on who you are, like as your value as a person. Who you are, like before you step on the mat and who you are after you step, like when you step off the mat, that's the same person. And then what you do on the mat, that's just like the in between. But like, no one's going to stop being your friend. No one's going to kick you out of the family. No one's going to kick you out of the gym. No one's going to like, you know, and if they are, then you might be surrounded by some shitty people. But like, if you could just keep the jiu-jitsu to the jiu-jitsu and you as a person to just use as a person, you know, for that moment in time, then I feel like then you can find like a happy little balance.
Yeah.
And of course, there's times where like they coincide with each other, you know, like because those two like they live in the same world. Like you are the same person, like that is a part of you, but it's not all that you have to offer as a person, you know. And then everything else that's going on in your life, you don't want to bring onto the mat, right? You want to keep that zone like your sanctuary. And the same thing too. You can't necessarily, I won't say you can't bring jiu-jitsu onto your regular life. If you want to use it for self-defense, or, you know, you want to like, hey, family members are like, hey, what's that karate stuff that you're doing? You know, like, all right, let me show you what jiu-jitsu really is, you know? But for the most part, it's like, you kind of like, you know, like compartmentalize, you know, a little bit. And that makes it a little bit easier. And then, being aware of what it is like again, everyone has different triggers and different thoughts that like can really snowball and like take you to a really like bad place. And it's understanding like when you get those thoughts and then learning the way to like reset yourself. I'm like, okay, that's not going to help me right now. And that's like another subject that's all complete like mental training and understanding like the thought process of like your own personal thought process, what to do, how to handle situations when you're actually competing, you know, so that everything is manageable, right? Instead of like, it's like this big thing, right? It's kind of like breaking it down to smaller parts so that it's easier to digest. And then that's where like, it's, you know, you don't have the anxiety, the stress as much. I personally am always nervous when I compete. You know, and but I don't let it paralyze me. I kind of use it to power me through, and I'm able to do that because I admit to myself that I am nervous. I'm like, okay, I am nervous, but that's okay. Like I'm supposed to be nervous. I'm competing. You know, like the moment that you deny that you're feeling what you're feeling, that's when it becomes very, very hard. You know, like don't feel that. Don't feel nervous. Don't feel anxious. Like, well, it's impossible. You're supposed to feel that way. You're about to go out there, put your body on the line, and be in front of a whole bunch of people in a high stress environment. But you can't like you can't like block that. Like, oh my God, you kind of have to embrace that kind of chaos and let it be part of you. Just for that moment in time. It's kind of like just holding on to lightning for a little bit. You just don't electrocute yourself, you know. You just hold on to a little bit of power, and then you let go, and then once you let go, then it's done, you know. And then you don't have to like let it keep like following you like for the rest of the day. Like there's always healthy amounts of stress. There's always healthy amounts. Like I would not do well in life without any pressure in my life, without any stress. I function the best when I have some sort of stress or pressure put on me. Anxiety and depression is just like another thing. Again, like I think maybe I've just become defiant over the years. But some of my biggest successes and they've all come from like the lowest points, you know, and like from struggling. And so there's something to be appreciated in that where, you know, struggle isn't all that bad, you know, struggle is necessary and pain is sometimes a little necessary. And for as long as you're aware of it and you're aware of in what way it can be used to help you grow as a person, as opposed to a way to hinder you from growing.
Yeah, one of the stresses I think that some people feel, you know, you're running a school and you want to compete and think that that's going to have a large impact on the school, and it might have some impact, but most of the students are there because of who you are, not because of the accomplishments you've made. They're there because of how you make them feel, how the quality of instructor you are. There's plenty of really good jiu-jitsu athletes who can't teach you how to tie your shoes, like, and they would belittle you as you tried it, and you wouldn't feel good about it, and you wouldn't want to go to that school. your students are there, and they're going to be there when you're done competing. They're going to be there when you have a bad day of competing, and they're, I think more or less they're rooting for you, but the relationship isn't based on how well you do when you compete.
Exactly.
And your competition goals are personal goals that's it, that you set for yourself, and they don't really, you don't need to put extra weight of the success of other things on that, because if you're a great instructor, you don't have to be a world champion. You don't have to be all these things. And if you are a world champion and you're a terrible instructor, you're going to have a hard time teaching jiu-jitsu. If that's what you want to do, you're better off competing and finding other things to do.
Yeah.
But so, you're a person who, I know you care about your students. You're there for them. You're a great instructor. And, regardless of how any competition goes, your students are coming back day after day, and they're there because of who you are and how you make them feel when they're on the mats.
Exactly. Yeah. If at the end of my life, if I'm remembered for no one's gonna remember the titles I won or how many gold medals or who I beat. No one's gonna give a shit about that. Let's be honest. All that stuff, it fades, it goes away. If all I'm remembered for at the end of my life is just how good my jiu-jitsu was, I did a really shitty job as a person, because people will remember how you make them feel. People will remember what you taught them, and people are gonna remember what you made them realize about themselves. They're not gonna remember this tournament, that medal, or that time you lost. They're not counting that. They're counting the times that you called to say, hey, how are you doing? Or how's your mom? How are your kids? Hey, how's that injury? They're going to remember that. They're going to remember the times that you cared. They're and everything else, it's it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Or even the time you complimented them on their sweep, or
exactly.
something like building confidence. And
exactly.
Yeah. And you don't have to be a world champion or a gym owner to do that for somebody. You could just be a blue belt in the gym talking to a white belt. Hey, that was a really nice takedown you did, and help them build that confidence with that. They'll remember that has importance on that day and how they view themselves.
Exactly. Sometimes just the right words on a bad day or on any day could be the difference of someone coming back, or someone approaching jiu-jitsu differently, or having I've had one young lady who almost quit jiu-jitsu, and then she was encouraged to come to one of my women's open mats, and I talked about my story, and then all of a sudden she's like, man, I want to come back to jiu-jitsu, and now she's she's one of the leading women for the jiu-jitsu program at her school. And she's she's a huge role model for other young women, and now she's passing that on, and really it just started with just me saying hey, I'm going through all this shitty stuff, and somehow I was able to make it happen, and I didn't let those shitty circumstances prevent me from being happy, or I didn't let them get in the way. I still have to struggle with these things, but you know what, I'm choosing to keep moving forward, and be oh wow, I can do that too, and there's more to jiu-jitsu than just being good at jiu-jitsu, but maybe I can have another purpose, helping other people feel stronger, just feel accomplished, or find their place. It's not always, it doesn't always necessarily have to be about the jiu-jitsu you bring. Sometimes it could just be about who you bring as a person.
It's nice to get that on the mats and be that person on and off the mats as well.
Yeah, you'll never regret being a good person or being kind. I can guarantee you'll never regret being kind. You might regret, being a jerk and being pompous and being arrogant. Well, I don't know. Sometimes people who are really arrogant aren't really aware that they're being arrogant, but you won't ever regret being a good person. You won't ever regret that. Even when people, it's people can take advantage of it for sure, but even then it's I was acting upon the good of my heart. Yeah. And that I can't apologize for that.
100%. You're super nice to somebody, and they did you wrong, or they treated you badly, or they ignored it or didn't appreciate it, you still did the right thing, because you want to be that person. You can't always control how the people react. Let's just say you bought a homeless guy a sandwich and he says that no, thank you. I'm not, or he's rude about it. Like, you still did the thing that makes you who you are.
Exactly.
That's what's important. Be the person, and sometimes it gets taken the wrong way or pushed back. Keep being that person, and it's a far better way to live.
Yeah, I can't control the outcome, but I can always control what I do, like my reaction or my actions, and that's about it. I have no responsibility to anything after that. I'll say zero responsibility, but like, I'm not responsible for how you are going to take things. I mean, that can also be taken in another bad, like, oh, I can be an asshole. I'm not responsible for your hurt feelings. No, technically you are, because you're being a jerk. But again, like, when you're in a position to do good, just do good. I mean, it's not hard, I feel like it takes a lot more effort, vastly more effort, to be an asshole than it is to be a good person or just to be kind. Yeah. And I think more people, that the world can use a few more kind people. Yeah, and both of which options are usually free. Why not do the nicer one that makes? I mean, to say something nice, absolutely free. Exactly. Why not do the thing that builds your character and helps somebody else at the same time? I'm glad we've talked about this. It's been a little different, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about jiu-jitsu as well, Kristina. As I mentioned before, this is before Worlds. You said you had an injury in December. Yes. By the time this airs, it'll be after Worlds. Obviously we can't look into the future, but tell me a little bit about that process of trying to overcome the injury and preparing for possibly the biggest tournament of your life. Yeah. So I was competing at Fight to Win Pro against Patty Fontes, and it was like a weird scramble. She was holding my foot. She went one way and I went the other, and my knee was just like, nope. And so I have already torn my PCL last year, and so it was kind of like a current re-injury of that. I also strained my MCL, and at the time, they thought I had almost fully torn my ACL as well. So it was like ACL, MCL, PCL, all that going on in my knee. That was in December. And then I went in for surgery in January. And so I had to miss out on Europeans because it was the same week. My day of surgery was the first day of Europeans. And I also had to miss out on PANS. Luckily, when I went in for the arthroscopic surgery, the damage to my ACL wasn't as severe as they thought. As the MRI, made it look, and all the tests were making it look. So the MCL, they let scar in. ACL, they didn't touch. PCL, they didn't reconstruct. They just cleaned it up. So I was like really, really lucky with that. And so I wasn't able to compete at all. But I was training by the end of February, and I've been training and doing all this prep. I did all like the physical therapy, the rehab, like everything you could possibly do just so I can get my knee back to, having that confidence. So being able to step onto the mat at Worlds, do I want to win? Of course I want to win. But there's going to be so many different victories going on that day. Like, the first one is being able to step on the mats again and not having to have spent a year away from competing and 6 to 9 months spending time recovering. Like, I was I was back after 3 months' time, that was great. The biggest win for me would be able to step onto that mat with full confidence. Like, again, like reminding myself that I belong. Like, I deserve to be there. I've worked really, really hard to be there. It was, for a time it felt like, man, I'm so behind everybody else. Like, everybody's been able to compete and they've been able to do this and do that, and they've been training, and like I'm so far behind. But like, once I was able to let go of those thoughts and be like, I'm not behind. I'm just on a different pace. Like, we're all on different tracks, and then we're just gonna all meet at the same place. But we all had different paths, and it's like one's neither better or worse. It's just different. And I got caught up a little bit. Again, like basing my value of me as a person off of like me as an athlete, and I had to like step back a little bit, like, no, it's okay, like I'm not that, I'm not gonna lose sight of who I am, and I'm not gonna get lost in the image of being the athlete and the competitor. Like there's still Kristina as Kristina. So I'm working really, really hard to step on those mats, to feel confident, feel strong, and embracing it. And again, just validating that I belong there. Like I'm not just another person to fill up a bracket. Like I'm there to be a contender and to be a champion. And that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, you 100% you belong there. You've done very well in the past, and this goal is very realistic. Sometimes you see athletes take some time off due to injury and come back even better, and it's hard to tell why that happens, but one of the reasons maybe is that your mind is really obsessing over the game while it can't do it physically. And so while you're missing your mat time, your mind is going crazy and trying to really wrap as much jiu-jitsu around it as it possibly can in order to satisfy the urge that it's not fulfilling. And it just seems like I'm really shocked by a lot of athletes that have come back significantly stronger and better than when they were on that steady stream of constantly competing, take off several months, have something happen and now they're back. And it's like, where did this person come from? It's almost like a transformation was made, and it was. I remember I interviewed Conor McGregor's coach, and he was talking about that. Conor McGregor had to have some time off. I don't know if he was injured or what. And when he came back, John Kavanaugh, his coach, he was saying it was like a different person showed up. And I asked him why, and that was his best guess, is that he spent all that time thinking about fighting and martial arts and all this stuff, where when you're a daily grind of it, you're just doing it, and you've taken out some of that mental process. So I think it might be somewhat of an advantage to have a different approach to this tournament, that you've had a different approach than you have in years past.
Oh, for sure. Like I just appreciate, things a little bit more, and like not taking for granted certain positions, and like, even like being like scraping things down to like back to the basics. It's like, wow, I can't do all these fancy things because my body can't move that way yet. All right, so let's strip it down to the raw basics again, and then building up from there. So like it really forces you to like not overextend your body or extend yourself past what your limitations are, but actually working with them and learning to move better because of it, and moving more efficiently and moving more intelligently, and not just like, bombarding yourself and throwing yourself into a wall, but actually like, like there's a strategy behind this, and I'm going to have to use that right now because I am physically unable to be this wrecking ball right now. Like I have to be delicate.
Well, definitely we're all rooting for you, but we care about you either way, no matter what happens at the tournament. But I do think this will be a year that has a lot of opportunity for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Kristina, I'm very grateful that you stopped by today and talked with us and talked about jiu-jitsu, talked about mental health, and I'm sure you're helping people in both categories. You've also had some help for you, from sponsors. Who do you have sponsoring you?
Big thank you to Control Industries, Jiu-Jitsu, Online, How Healthy Wellness Center, Savage Street Cryotherapy, Liao Optics, and Virus International. Like these companies, like I really would not be able to do what I do on a daily basis if it wasn't for the support of these companies. Control Industries, they've been with me ever since I was a purple belt since 2011. Hands down one of my biggest supporters, and I've loved that I've been able to grow with them, and they've been able to grow with me. And Digital Online, great. I just filmed my DVD, my full-length DVD with them a couple months ago, so be on the lookout for that. So I'm really, really excited to have that released and see what the feedback is on that. Those two, particularly those two, and How Healthy Wellness Center. I'll have to say, like, Dr. Spencer Howell, like, he fixes me right up. And like as much as we do physically, it helps to have someone who can care for for like all the aches and pains and injuries, and Savage 3 cryotherapy. Like not only do they do like the strength and conditioning, but like the recovery with their cryo chambers and the therapy there. The cryotherapy is amazing. It's kind of like the new like trend thing right now as far as recovery goes. And so if you have an opportunity to try it out, I definitely would.
How long have you been doing that?
Cryotherapy? I think for maybe like 2 years now, 2.5. I've been with them for a while. I think since 2016 I've been with them, and I definitely went in kind of thinking like, I'm not sure if this stuff is going to really help, and it really does help a lot. Like I was feeling a difference after like 3 treatments, and now like going in for like spot treatment or like sometimes just doing the full tank. And I hate being cold, but I definitely like how I feel afterwards.
Yeah, got to go through a little bit of the pain to get to the feeling better, I guess, on that one.
Exactly.
Is there a good way to contact you if somebody wants to do a seminar with you?
Oh, yeah. You can directly email me, Kristina at kbjujitsu.com, or you can always just hit me up on Instagram at kbjujitsu or on Facebook, Kristina Barlaan. Definitely, like, I'm really big on social media, so definitely follow me on Instagram. You can, watch all my jiu-jitsu stuff, all my food stuff, all my random car karaoke, weird dancey stuff that I do too. Or even if I'm just jamming out on my ukulele or my guitar, I like to offer a little insight beyond the jiu-jitsu world that I live, and
awesome.
Kind of show who I am as a person too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for jumping on here with me.
Thank you so much for having me again, Byron.
And I want to thank Kristina for coming on here and helping out the listening audience. And man, she's just such a leader in the sport, and she's growing into that role, and she's feeling it well, and she's helping people on and off the mat, and by being one of the members who are willing to share her like off the mat story and help people. Man, it's great having her on here, and wish the best for her, and we'll definitely have her back on the show. So good about speaking about jiu-jitsu and other topics, man. It was great to have her back on the show, and go check out the past interview we had with her. I'll throw a link to that in the show notes as well. It was 2 years ago, basically, when we had her on, and I couldn't believe that much time had passed. But yeah, it's great to get it back and check up with her.
At this point in the show, we always tell everybody, tell your friends about the show. If you liked it, pass it on. And usually we're expecting that you'll know somebody else that does jiu-jitsu or is thinking about it, and that's who you're going to pass it on to. But definitely, if you know somebody who's struggling with mental illness, struggling with depression or any such thing, pass this on to them, and perhaps they'll be encouraged. Even
that might not be the exact case. If you have let's say a friend who has a son or a daughter that's struggling with mental illness, like the stuff she was talking about helps explain it to people who don't understand it. And that's where a lot of us will be. A lot of us aren't suffering from depression or suicidal thoughts, but the odds are in your life you will know somebody who has to deal with that. And just being aware of things to say, or conversations that could come up, or things like warning signs to look out for, that's very valuable. So this could it could be totally not jiu-jitsu related, and just a mental health awareness episode, really. And Kristina did a great job, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, it may be a topic for another day, but I actually have a daughter who's bipolar, and that's why I'm raising one of my grandchildren. So, yeah, this episode is definitely something that I appreciate.
Yeah, that would be something that would be another topic that would get, look at things from a different angle and help people off the mat. That's one of the goals with the show, is we want you guys to really enjoy jiu-jitsu the most that you possibly can. You get good at it, the best that you can. No doubt about it. None of the three of us are going to be like world champions. That's not on the goal, and it's not something that we could actually do, with our off-the-mat lives. It doesn't match up at all. But we can become as good at jiu-jitsu as we possibly can. Those are like jiu-jitsu stuff. But also, we want our listeners to have the best off-the-mat life as well. So talking to you guys about stuff like this is an opportunity that we definitely should take.
Yeah, I look at jiu-jitsu as a lifestyle. I'm not going to be a world champion, as Byron said. And, I train jiu-jitsu. It keeps me happy. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me in shape. I get to meet a lot of cool people like that. And, like we were talking about earlier, I want to surround myself with good people, and it just puts me in a better mood. Jiu-jitsu is a lifestyle. We're here to help people. I mean, not just in jiu-jitsu, and all around life. And, that's our goal.
Speaking of helping people, let's get on to the article of the week.
Man, Joe has like an A+ in segues.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to ride one of those things. I think you can rent them up in Houston. I'll go give it a try.
He can't ride a Segway, but he could drive a vehicle.
I can drive a vehicle. In fact, our article of the week is about driving vehicles, which I know is not directly related to BJJ, but I think we can make it happen. I have 2 daughters. They're 2 years apart in age, and circumstances led that both of them kind of took driver's ed overlapping. There was about a year where I was teaching teenagers how to drive. And this article is basically an anecdotal recounting of that. And kind of what I got at was at the end of this year, I felt like I was a better and a safer driver because I spent a year every time we drove someplace, whether they were driving or I was driving, I was reminding them of the speed limit, reminding them of weather conditions, reminding them of safe following distance, traffic, everything. And at the end of the year, I felt like I was noticing those things more when I was driving, which obviously would make me a safer driver. And so I thought about how this would relate to jiu-jitsu and kind of getting back to those basics, because all the things I'm telling my girls about driving, they're things that everybody knows, but we kind of take for granted. And as I thought about them consciously, I felt like I was a better driver, and I think the same is true with jiu-jitsu. In the article, I suggested one way you could do this is to talk to your coach. Hey, what are some basics I can focus on that will help me get better at jiu-jitsu? What are some fundamentals that I might be missing? I didn't put in the article, maybe because I thought it was evident already, but I think the easiest way to actually replicate this in your jiu-jitsu life would be to pull a white belt or some new students under your wing and kind of mentor them. And if you're mentoring a newer jiu-jitsu student and you see them sitting out around, taking a break during the free rolling part of class, go sit with them and watch the people roll. And maybe right in front of you, there'll be a purple belt and a white belt rolling. And you can talk to this young student. You can tell him, notice how the purple belt is doing this easily because his fundamentals are strong. And you talk about posture. You talk about grip fighting. You talk about controlling the pace. You talk about these fundamental things. You'll help that white belt get better, but you'll also be reminding yourself of the fundamentals that make your jiu-jitsu good as well.
Yeah, I've heard that many times from people who are teaching jiu-jitsu, that they actually get better as they go back and they teach the basics to a class, and typically this happens, you go up blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, and somewhere in the mix you find yourself picking up a class here and there and teaching it, or maybe you open up your own school. And part of your thoughts would be, man, I don't have, the people I used to train with around me, or, a room full of a bunch of black belts and brown belts to train with. I've got a bunch of white belts. But you've got to break this stuff down to an element where the white belt can understand it. And at some point, you lost those little elements and you just do them, or you gloss over a couple of them. And by having to teach it, you see it from a different perspective, and you'll probably clean up your own game a little bit. It's like Gary was talking about going back to his game and like if you forget a few of the basics and go back and polish those up, and you'll have a great performance.
Yeah, I've actually seen people teach technique before, and then when the class is drilling, there'll be one student that's just not getting it, and their training partner's like, I'm not really resisting, that he's just not sweeping me. And the guy teaching the technique will kind of watch, and then he'll say, okay, wait a minute, let me show you the technique again. And he'll say, there's a really important detail here. And he'll show that, and then the student moves on and they get the technique. Now, it's not that he didn't know the detail or, was not good at the detail when he taught the move the first time. It's that he's kind of taken it for granted. He's been doing it so long that he just assumes that people know that, but not everybody does. And when he's kind of forced to look at it a little bit, I think that, develops his skill level as well a little bit more.
100%. I agree with that. And it's going back to the basics is going to really help anybody. And you know what? The article is on our website, BjjBrick.com. Back to the basics. There'll be a link to in the show notes. And check out that great artwork that came along with the article. Man, it looks like somebody took the Back to the Future logo and glossed over the word future and put the word basics, but couldn't figure out how to make it slant the same way.
It looks good, Byron.
Man, if you hadn't said that, I don't think most people would notice. I did not notice.
I didn't notice it either.
That something was wrong.
No, I didn't notice it either.
Yeah, sure.
Way to point out your faults, Byron.
I got to go back to the basics of photoshopping things, and getting that curve shouldn't have been that hard, but it just wasn't working out for me, and I can get at the curve but not look right at the same time. And yeah, I just gave up, and it says I'm happy with it. It's good enough. And it's in no danger of copying too much of Back to the Future to actually be relevant.
Oh, wait, Byron, I just got a phone call coming in.
Oh, yeah, here
it's
we go.
Michael J. Fox.
No.
He's upset because we stole his logo.
Okay, well, we got a little bit of problem coming our way.
Yeah, I just hung up on him, so
probably
hopefully he doesn't call back.
Yeah, it's just like jiu-jitsu. If you have a problem, just kind of ignore it. So what? Some guys got mount or got your arm isolated. Just ignore it, and it'll probably go away.
That is a good thing for, talking about jiu-jitsu. We just can't ignore stuff. And it's funny that you just happened to say that. And I was talking to one of my training partners the other day is he climbs, he's got my neck and, goes to mount and, I'm being a little still and hopefully he's not going to get a good grip on my neck. I really kind of ignored defense, thinking maybe he's going to let go of my neck and transition somewhere else. Nope. I ignored everything, and 2 seconds later, I'm gurgling and tapping. And it made me think, because after we got done, we were talking about it, and I knew I could be in danger, but I ignored it. We can't ignore the danger signs when the hand gets around the neck, the Kimura grip's locked up, somebody's got your ankle trapped. We can't ignore. We need to act.
Yeah, it's almost like a form of meditation where it makes you focus on something, and if you don't, you'll probably have some trouble. You need to be super aware of things that are happening. And, I've heard, I think Gary say that's one of the best parts about jiu-jitsu is that you have to focus all the time on what's happening.
Yeah, as the ski instructor for South Park says, if you continue to ignore, you're going to be in for a bad time.
Yeah, pizza or French fries. You don't want to have a bad time. And isn't that one of the best things about jiu-jitsu is the straight up
pizza and French fries
requirement that you have to focus, especially if it's a competitive match. Is that one of the better things about jiu-jitsu, you think, Gary?
Besides the pizza and French fries?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I know Gary's not much of a competitor, but
he's not much in the lift department either.
Let's talk about the best part of jiu-jitsu. We've got an event coming up, June 22, 23, and 24. That's not the best part of jiu-jitsu. But we have heard that a father and son are coming to that event, and they're traveling a pretty good distance to be there. And I also had the opportunity to roll with my son the other day for the first time in a while. He's done a little training. And those two things got me thinking about how jiu-jitsu can bring families together. And I know Gary talks about the camaraderie within jiu-jitsu, but when that camaraderie and that relationship can become a father-son kind of thing or a father-daughter, a family thing, Gary, you've got to admit that that's the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
That is definitely the best thing about jiu-jitsu right there.
I think the fact that it's a solid self-defense. We can go out there, have fun, learn self-defense. And it's not just self-defense against people who are trying to hurt us. It's self-defense against, heart disease and unhealthy habits. I think that's the best thing of jiu-jitsu. What do you think about that, Gary?
I like Joe's better.
Thank you. You know what, Gary? I like yours better.
What's mine? Mine is family. When you get to train with your family, the camaraderie.
Yeah, you would think so.
Gary's like, Gary's like foot locks. That's the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
You know, it doesn't matter what Byron says. I'm always going to side with Joe.
Yeah. Well, and I'll always side with you, Gary. So, I guess Joe's got a large say in this. But what's really happened here, Gary, is the best thing about jiu-jitsu has changed several times in the past several episodes. You can look back at episode 243. you talked about 3 different things that were the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
I hate you guys.
Jiu-jitsu can be anything you want it to be. That's the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
And then, so let's recap these, Gary.
No, the difference is, you guys are stale. You guys don't evolve. Me, my jiu-jitsu evolves. The best thing about jiu-jitsu evolves every week. You guys are like Tyrannosaurus Rexes. You guys won't be around. I'm like the mosquito. I'll be around forever because I evolve.
What's happened?
As a T-Rex, I can tell you're not going to armbar me.
Yeah, but I'm going to fill you with disease.
Oh, that sounded weird. Okay. What's happened
Joe's
here?
already coughing. See that?
What's happened here is this has been a multi-episode prank pulled on Gary. This reminds us of way back when we got Gary to talk about the same "I've got your back" joke time and time every week. He took the bait. It was really remarkable. But this time it's been what's so great about jiu-jitsu. And you know what? You've taken the bait several times. So Gary, relax, my man. Sit back and listen to this prank unfold as the weeks have gone by. All right, my friends, especially talking to Gary here. Let's play some fun music and talk about a prank that has been going on for several episodes. The prank starts with a conversation between me and Joe that happened off the air. We decided to get Gary to say certain things are the best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's generally a really positive guy, and if you ask him if something's the best thing about Jiu-Jitsu, he tends to agree with you and expand upon that. This seemed like it would be a pretty easy prank to pull off week after week, and let's see how the evolution of this prank unfolds. We start off with Joe getting him in episode 243.
Yeah, Joe, I agree. That is what is so great about jiu-jitsu. There is, as Helen Keller said, so much suffering. We're on the mat, and I don't like to call them failures, but we fail, we suffer many, many times, each and every time we step on the mat. We're going to suffer more on the mat, than we probably are, in life, in a given day. And all these setbacks, all this suffering is going to teach you to overcome those things. And like you said, Joe, we go through it so often that when we do have a bigger setback, like you said, on the backside of divorce there, we are going to, overcome it much quicker and with more resiliency than the regular person, I think. And that is due to jiu-jitsu.
Well, that was Joe getting him on episode 243. And I couldn't let Joe get that one by himself. I had to ask him about something else being the best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Biggest thing I've learned from jiu-jitsu is just that tenacity. Don't quit. And it's helped me so much in life, versus just jiu-jitsu. It's probably helped me twice as much in life as it has helped me in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. That's like the best thing about jiu-jitsu for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, Gary. The best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is learning that tenacity. How about this? The same episode, 243. We got you 3 times, my man. 3 times. And this one ended up being a reoccurring theme, so this is probably your really deep down best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Personally, I think the best thing about jiu-jitsu is just the camaraderie, the friendships I've made. And
yep, friendships like the ones you have on this podcast where we give you a hard time. Next one is episode 244, where Joe gets you.
And I've been aware sometimes when I've got stuff going on in life that it's like a 2-hour reprieve from life's problems. And Gary, wouldn't you say that that's maybe the best thing about jiu-jitsu?
In all reality, that and the camaraderie, which also takes my mind off, is the best thing about jiu-jitsu. Is I forget about anything I have going on in life, which, sometimes there's stressors, and we make them out. worse than they are. But boy, I can go to jiu-jitsu, spend, an hour, 2 hours rolling, and I forget about everything else. And even when I come home, I don't think about it. I'm on such a high, and it just changes my whole mentality. It just makes me that much happier for the rest of the day. And, I'm lucky I've got a very supportive wife, and she understands me really well. Like, she'll see times where I'll come home from work and I'm in a bad mood, and it may not be a day to roll, but she'll see that I'm kind of upset or agitated, and she'll be like, "Hey, Gary, go roll, get to the gym, go lift weights, go ride your bike," and it just does wonders for me.
Gary, it truly does wonders for you, and clearly this episode, the best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was the fact that it was a big stress reliever. Let's fast forward a whole week to episode 245, and Gary takes the bait again. Gary, would you say that that's one of the best things about Jiu-Jitsu is being able to make a mistake, learn from it, and keep going?
Yeah, that's what I love so much about Jiu-Jitsu is we're always going to make mistakes. And when you're going against a very good grappler, and you make a mistake, you're going to pay for it. And it's such a fun game because then you, as Lenny says, you make a note of it, you think about its cause, you respond appropriately. So then what you try to do is you have to figure out another way to take the back or to get the sweep without exposing your head, your arm, or whatever you expose. So it's kind of neat because you're never going to take that same path to grandma's house. You're always, there's always going to be different goblins and everything jumping out of the path, and everybody's got a different way to keep you from getting to grandma's house, and you want to get to grandma's house because you want those cookies. So you're going to find a way to get there. So that's what I think is so great about jiu-jitsu.
Even if you have to go over the river and through the woods, you're going to get to grandma's house.
Yep, we're going to grandma's.
I can't believe you brought up going to grandma's house in a talk about what's great about jiu-jitsu, but you sure did, Gary. Learning lessons, overcoming mistakes, on your way to grandma's house, getting that cookie. That is the best part about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now let's go to episode 247, and for some reason, this one kind of gets caught by Gary and raises his suspicion. Thinking about all the benefits that you mentioned, a big one, health. Think about how much better your health is because you do jiu-jitsu. Is that the best part about jiu-jitsu, you think?
For me, not necessarily. I'm really big into the camaraderie, the social aspect, the self-confidence it's given me, in life. It has made me more self-confident. It has made me a happier person. But I also think when I'm happy, my health is better. I guess it could go back to health. I think if I'm happy, my blood pressure is probably lower. There's going to be less stress. As we all know, stress leads to, sickness, disease. So, I guess they do go hand in hand.
So it's maybe not the best thing, but you would have to say, I love that about jiu-jitsu, right?
Oh, definitely. You got that right, Joe. I have a feeling you guys just threw me down a path.
I don't know what you're about, Gary. We do have a quote of
what happens a lot on this show is I'm the guy who gets picked on this show. I got a couple bullies I hang out with, and they pick on me and send me down a path and make fun of me. And I have a feeling you guys got something wrong. I can't wait to see what it is, though. So, I appreciate it.
Yes, Gary, episode 247. You were hot on our heels with our prank. You know something's happening. And episode 248, you referenced our last attempt to get you with the benefits of jiu-jitsu. And basically, at this point in time, the prank is busted.
Gary likes the game The Floor is Lava, in which he tries to stay completely on top of his opponent at all times. No feet, no hands touching. It just tries to ride his opponent like that.
That's Gary's favorite part of jiu-jitsu is the playing the lava floor. Right, Gary?
Yeah. But the crazy thing is, I think the guy I rolled with this morning was doing that to me. Because I feel like I was in the lava today.
Yeah. What's great about that, the lava game, Gary?
It's great about that game is you learn how to control top position. And really, top position is where you want to be.
Yeah, it's probably the best thing about jiu-jitsu.
Well, besides the health benefits.
That's it. We got busted. We're going to do this so many weeks in a row until Gary catches on. Using the flora as lava and benefits of the top game. And Gary put the pieces of the puzzle together and found his way to Grandma's house. There you go, Gary. It's all over now.
You know what the best thing about this podcast is? Gary always figures out that we're pranking him. I mean, it might take 4 or 5 weeks, but he always figures it out.
Though, I didn't figure that one out. I just, I actually threw out the health benefits to bust on Byron on episode 248, because Byron kept trying to tell me the health benefits were the most important. But, a lot of times I never did say that was the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really only said 2 things were the best thing, but it always kept going back to camaraderie. And, in my opinion, that is the best thing besides the health benefits. But, what I find this is a little crazy on this episode. We're talking about mental health and, trying to help everybody out. And you guys are, pushing me down a dark, path. I really appreciate that, guys.
Well, we know you're just having a good time with us, but
we're having a good time.
Really, one of the best things about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the I guess saying mental health benefits might be overstating it a little bit, but it does help people deal with stress. It helps people deal with social anxiety. I mean, there are just a ton of benefits of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think that's the best thing about Jiu-Jitsu.
I would say the camaraderie and then the health benefits.
And how about the distraction from your day? It's also a big one, Gary.
Well, I would say camaraderie and then the health benefits.
Okay. Well, that's been interesting to throw that out there. I mean, you were like, I think you guys are messing with me. I don't know what it is. One more week and we decided to give it another shot.
I would have kept going. I would have went farther. You would have got me more weeks. I hadn't figured it out.
But the root of this is that, like, the setup is, don't you think that's the best thing about jiu-jitsu? And then you would come back and you would say, yeah, and then you would typically bring it back to something else, but you wouldn't say, maybe once or twice, no, like, yeah, that's great about jiu-jitsu, and then you'd work from that base. You're a very agreeable guy typically on the show, and when we throw you a softball, isn't that great about jiu-jitsu? Well, yeah, that's great about jiu-jitsu. And
that is great. I mean, there's a lot of great things about jiu-jitsu, and that's the difference. Like, I'm so positive. I know you go down one path and you can get negative if you start talking about something else, but I'm positive with everything I talk about. Like you said, I'm agreeable. I see so many different aspects. I keep my eyes open. The horizons are broad for me, Byron.
That's what I love about jiu-jitsu. When you go to class is over. I'm not saying that there's never a time when somebody's talking about some personal stuff that's tough or they're nursing an injury, but isn't it generally positive at a jiu-jitsu class? I mean, after jiu-jitsu, you might be beat up, you might be tired, but everybody had a good time. You talk to somebody like Gary, and it's just positive after positive after positive. And I honestly believe that is one of the best things about jiu-jitsu.
I would say more like camaraderie and then health.
Well, that too.
And the floor is lava. That's great.
Yeah.
The lava. The floor is lava. That was great going back and listening to me getting punked.
Well, we're glad you enjoy it, Gary, because it might happen again sometime.
Yeah, it just makes me realize I'm not as bright as I thought I was.
And realizing that's one of the best things about the podcast, isn't it, Gary?
Now I know why I'm on this podcast. Hey, I've learned my place, Byron.
I'm sure you'll get us back sometime, Gary.
Oh, I'll get your back, all right.
Literally. So after a slight derailment, which was fun.
No, that was a good derailment.
Let's talk about the BjjBrick experience, the Omahalapalooza, as Gary likes to call it. June 22, 23, and 24. Fox Fitness is graciously offered to host a BjjBrick event. Friday night, we'll have open mat. And Tim, Sled, Rolly Delgado, Jake Fox, Byron Jabara, Gary Hull, Joe Thomas, along with a bunch of other folks will be on the mats for open mat. June 23, Tim's going to be teaching a youth seminar. I'm actually looking forward to watching that myself just to gain a little better insight into teaching kids. And then Tim and Rolly will both be teaching seminars for adults. On June 24th, there'll be a BjjBrick team event where we'll be showing some techniques. And there'll be a live recording that night as well. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody June 22, 23, and 24 in Wichita, Kansas.
Hey, and they are probably going to be playing some jokes on me, too. So you do not want to miss that.
That's actually true, Gary. So
not a bad idea.
As you guys were going, I was like, okay, what do they have planned that they're doing to me?
You couldn't predict what we have planned for you, Gary. And you're not going to probably see it unless you're at the event. We may put it on YouTube. It depends how it comes out. But
it'll be on YouTube.
Be on your toes, my friend.
Hopefully it's not going to include a bottle of baby oil and a game of Twister.
Well, speaking of game of Twister, and see, I'm not prepared, and I don't know where I'm going.
just start talking. Something good will happen.
Gary was going to hit me with an audiobook, but really we covered that segment with your prank unfolding, Gary. And I don't think we need to do an audiobook this week.
Okay.
We appreciate you stepping in there, Gary, and playing along with the prank, my friend.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. Your payback's coming.
Yep, maybe at the event.
Not really.
I think we'll double.
Not really.
Okay, something that happens that doesn't get aired is Gary's prank on us, and I'll call him to start recording the episode, and he'll act like he's not there. Which
that's not a good prank.
It's not. I mean, it's okay. I mean, you kind of get me something. Did it connect? Are you there, Gary? Are you there? Hello? And like, yeah, I'm just messing with you.
I hit the wrong button today.
Oh, yeah. But occasionally, or you'll talk and you'll kind of cut words of the sentence.
Not only am I not very organized, I'm not very technologically sound either. So where Byron thinks that, I'm playing a joke, normally I just can't get the darn thing to work. That's my issue.
Well, I'll just take it as a joke, which gives you some bonus points there, Gary. And
I don't need bonus points, Byron.
It leaves me seeking revenge. That's really what you want to do. I want to give a quick shout out to the Patreon supporters on the podcast. We've got definitely a handful of people that are stepping up and said, hey, I want to support this show and help it produce the best quality content that it can. I want to give a shout out to Nathan, Tim, and Keith. And what they've done is they go to the Patreon website. There's a link in the show notes, and they're pitching in. The most common thing is to pitch in $1 per episode. End of the month, your card will be charged $1 per every episode we've put out. And as a token of our appreciation, we mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch, a BjjBrick sticker, and cordially invite you to our private Facebook group, where we'll often talk about upcoming episodes and get a little input from the listeners there. And man, that Patreon has been a tremendous help to the podcast, and it's really helped develop the show to where it's at now, approaching episode 250. And episode 250 will be a doozy, to say the least. We will be recording it. Here's the plan. In case this doesn't happen, this is the plan. We're going to record it the day before it airs, which is a stretch for me as somebody who edits a podcast, because typically it takes me a day or two to edit something down. We'll be recording it in the evening. Typically the podcast will air in the morning on a Monday, at least here in Wichita. That's when it airs, judging on your time zone. Hopefully it'll air at the same time. But 250 is recorded about 12 hours before it actually airs. Maybe more than 12, 18 hours. And the reason why that's happening is because we're going to record it in front of a studio audience. Some of the people who are attending the BjjBrick camp, they're all invited to attend the live recording. I don't know how many will show up, but I know that I'll be there. Hopefully Joe and Gary can make it for the recording. Maybe Tim and Rolly. Maybe we'll take some questions from the audience. we got a lot of options here, but a couple of hurdles have been thrown at us as far as recording all together, recording in a larger room. Not sure about the sound quality and issues that we'll be able to deal with. Hopefully it's not a train wreck or a dumpster fire. And hopefully I can get it edited and up the next day. So just a heads up, 250 might come out a few hours late or even a day later. It'll be there around the corner. And if it's not the live recording at all, we'll mention it, but I guess it was a disaster. But I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, those are just obstacles that are thrown our way. And, probably the best thing about jiu-jitsu is we learn to adapt and overcome those obstacles. So I think we'll be okay.
Oh, that's a good one, Gary. So, Byron, this episode, we're going to actually be recording and people will be able to see us?
So I do plan on doing some video and putting it on our YouTube channel. It's not the term live, I don't know. Maybe we'll stream it on Facebook.
But there'll be people in the room that are able to see us?
That's the plan. We'll have an audience there and some folding chairs. We'll have a table set up with our microphones. We'll have our show notes, quote of the week and normal stuff like that. And it'll be like kind of like a topic episode. We'll probably be talking about the weekend. I mean, we're wrapping up a weekend of jiu-jitsu together, talking about some things we've learned and some different things like that.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I've got a plan in effect that I will have to wear pants for that episode.
Well, not if you guys are playing Twister.
Oh, Gary.
Oh, is this a no-gi episode?
At least shorts.
But that's the best thing about jiu-jitsu is we have both gi and no gi.
That's what I love about jiu-jitsu.
Well, that's what they call it, jiu-jitsu and no gi. Or submission wrestling. But yeah, so it'll be kind of pushing us a little bit outside of where we are usually. A, with the recording of it, and B, with the turnaround. So if it's a day late, heads up, that's what's happening. Don't freak out. And I'm sure I'll get a couple emails about, hey, what happened to the episode? Hopefully listen to the end of this one and you'll understand. But that's the plan, and if all goes according to plan, it'll be released as usual, and it'll be a great episode. We'll all be together, hanging out. The camaraderie will be nice.
And if there's not an episode that drops on that Monday, if it's a day or two late, there will be a YouTube drop, Gary singing and dancing. So there will be content on that Monday one way or another.
And most people are actually waiting for the singing and dancing by myself.
Yeah, go like or subscribe, I guess is the correct term, to our YouTube channel. I plan on taking some video of the event if you're not able to attend in person. We'll be sharing some of that, obviously not the whole thing, but we'll be sharing some of the experiences on YouTube. And that should be a fun way to kind of join in if you're from afar. What a great episode. A lot of different topics and on and off the mat stuff, you guys. 250 around the corner. We're excited to bring it to you. And it'll be unlike any episode of BjjBrick that's ever been recorded. Groundbreaking. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better. We'll see you on the mats, guys.
And remember, the best thing about jiu-jitsu is camaraderie and then health benefits.
And no gi twister. But I'm trying to figure out the schedule here, guys. When to go out to eat, when to go to the comedy club, when we're going to, record the episode and that sort of things. And I always am building in time to shower. Very important.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.